As the sun began to set on the quiet stretch of highway, I found myself driving alone on a desolate road in the middle of nowhere. The radio crackled with static, and the monotonous hum of the engine was my only company. I had been on the road for hours, and the isolation was beginning to take its toll on my nerves. As I rounded a bend, I saw a figure up ahead, standing on the shoulder of the road with their thumb out. A hitchhiker. I hesitated for a moment, torn between my instinct to help and the stories of caution that had been ingrained in my mind. But something about this person seemed different. There was an air of sadness around them that tugged at my empathy. I pulled over, and the hitchhiker approached my car. They were dressed in worn clothes, their face obscured by a mop of tangled hair. I rolled down the window and offered a tentative smile. "Need a lift?" The hitchhiker nodded, their voice soft as they replied, "Thank you." Without a word, they climbed into the passenger seat. The car was filled with an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the soft hum of the engine and the occasional sound of a passing car. I stole a glance at them, but their face remained hidden beneath the curtain of hair. "So, where are you headed?" I asked, trying to break the ice. "Anywhere," they replied, their voice barely audible. As the miles rolled on, I attempted to strike up a conversation, but the hitchhikers' responses were short and cryptic. It was as if they were carrying a heavy burden, one that weighed down their words and made them reluctant to share. I glanced at them again, this time noticing the tattered backpack at their feet. "Traveling light, I see." They nodded, and for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of sadness in their eyes. It was as if they were carrying more than just the contents of that backpack. There was a weight to their very being. Hours passed, and the moon hung high in the sky. The hitchhiker's presence was becoming increasingly unsettling, yet I couldn't bring myself to ask them to leave. It was as if an unspoken connection had formed between us, one that defied logic and reason. Eventually, we came across an old, abandoned rest stop. I decided it was time to take a break, hoping that stretching my legs and getting some fresh air would ease the tension that had settled in the car. I parked the car, and we both stepped out onto the cracked pavement. The night air was cool and filled with the scent of pine. I walked to the edge of the rest stop, gazing out at the vast darkness that stretched before us. The hitchhiker remained near the car, their form a shadowy silhouette against the moonlit landscape. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, deciding to capture a photo of the eerie scene, the abandoned rest stop, the hitchhiker, and the vast expanse of the night. I raised the camera, framed the shot, and pressed the shutter button. The hitchhiker turned to face me, their hair shifting to reveal a face that sent a shiver down my spine. Their eyes were empty voids, and their mouth was a twisted, unnatural grin that seemed to stretch too far. Their true form was a grotesque distortion of humanity, something otherworldly and terrifying. I stumbled back, dropping my phone in shock. The hitchhiker's eerie gaze followed me, and their grin widened as if they were relishing my fear. Panic surged through me, and I fumbled for the car keys, desperate to escape this nightmare. I jumped into the driver's seat, my heart racing as I slammed the door shut. I turned the key in the ignition, and the engine roared to life. Glancing in the rearview mirror, I saw the hitchhiker still standing there, their grin never wavering. I floored the accelerator, speeding away from the rest stop and the horrifying hitchhiker. My mind raced, trying to process what I had seen. I reached for my phone, trembling as I opened the photo I had taken. But the photo was different. Instead of the nightmarish hitchhiker, it showed only the empty rest stop and the moonlit landscape. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the innocuous image, unable to reconcile it with the horrors I had witnessed. The road stretched out before me, seemingly endless. And as I drove on, the weight of that encounter remained with me, a haunting reminder that some things exist beyond our understanding, lurking in the shadows of the unknown. The night was draped in an inky blackness, the moon a faint glimmer against the canvas of the sky. I was driving alone down a desolate stretch of highway, the hum of the engine and the rhythmic thud of the tires on the pavement my only companions. It was the kind of night that made you feel small, insignificant, and acutely aware of your isolation. As I rounded a bend, my headlights caught a figure standing by the side of the road. A hitchhiker. My initial instinct was to keep driving, to heed the warnings about the dangers of picking up strangers on desolate roads at night. But something about this person was different, a sense of desperation seemed to hang around them like a shroud. I slowed down and pulled over, the gravel crunching beneath my tires. The hitchhiker approached, their face half shrouded in shadow. "Need a lift?" I called out, my voice carrying a mix of caution and concern. The hitchhiker nodded, their features finally coming into focus as they stepped into the dim light of my headlights. They were young, maybe in their early 20s, with disheveled hair and a haunted look in their eyes. Their clothes were torn and blood-stained. As they settled into the passenger seat, I could feel the weight of their silence. "You all right?" I asked, my concern growing with each passing second. They hesitated before finally speaking, their voice shaky. "Thank you for stopping. You won't believe what just happened to me." I glanced at them, waiting for them to continue. "I was in an accident," they began, their words punctuated by a trembling breath. "Just a few miles down this very road. A car came out of nowhere, lost control, and slammed into me. I barely managed to crawl out before my car burst into flames. I felt a chill run down my spine. That's horrifying. Are you hurt?" They shook their head. "I'm shaken up, but miraculously, I escaped with just a few scratches. But you need to know something. I've been hearing whispers on the wind, like warnings. They're telling me that the accident was no accident at all. It's a cursed stretch of road, and history is about to repeat itself." I frowned, unsure of what to make of their words. "What do you mean, cursed?" The hitchhiker's gaze was intense, their eyes locking onto mine. "This road has seen more accidents than you can imagine. Fatalities, disappearances, there's something malevolent here, something that feeds on the lives of those who dare to pass through. And it won't stop until it claims its next victim." A shiver crept up my spine, a mixture of fear and skepticism warring within me. "You can't be serious. Accidents happen all the time. There's no curse." They leaned closer, their expression desperate. "You don't understand. I've seen it. I've seen the twisted faces, the hands that reach out from the darkness. I've heard the anguished cries of those who met their end on this road." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, the weight of their words sinking in despite my resistance. "What do you suggest I do?" "Turn back," they urged, their voice quivering. "Don't go any further. You have a chance to escape this fate, but you must heed my warning." As I looked into their eyes, I saw a depth of sincerity that sent a chill down my spine. The rational part of me scoffed at the idea of a cursed road, but the unease in my gut was undeniable. "All right," I finally said, my voice hoarse. "I'll turn around." Relief washed over the hitchhiker's face, a mixture of gratitude and fear. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." I made a U-turn and headed back the way I had come, the road stretching out before me like an uncertain path. The silence in the car was palpable, heavy with unspoken dread. Minutes turned into hours, the moon casting an eerie glow over the landscape. With every mile I covered, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes were fixated on me from the shadows. And then, as I rounded a bend, I saw it, an overturned car, its mangled frame illuminated by my headlights. I slammed on the brakes, my heart pounding in my chest as I realized what had happened. The accident had just occurred, and the hitchhiker's warning echoed in my mind. I jumped out of the car and rushed to the scene, my breath catching in my throat as I saw the twisted wreckage. It was the same car the hitchhiker had described, the same car that had crashed into them. I dialed 911, my hands trembling as I reported the accident. As I waited for help to arrive, I couldn't escape the feeling that I had narrowly escaped a fate that had been meant for me. When the authorities finally arrived, they took my statement and assured me that they would investigate the accident thoroughly. But as I stood there, staring at the wreckage, I knew the truth. The curse was real, and the phantom hitchhiker had saved my life. I returned to my car, the weight of the encounter settling over me like a heavy cloak. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the road itself was alive with a malevolent force, a force that hungered for the lives of those who dared to pass through. And as I continued on my journey, I couldn't escape the chilling realization that I had been granted a second chance, a chance to escape the clutches of the cursed road. But I would always carry with me the memory of the haunted hitchhiker's warning, a warning that had saved me from a fate worse than death. The storm raged on outside, the rain pelting against the windshield in a relentless assault. The sky was an ominous shade of dark gray, and the wind howled like a creature in agony. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles turning white, as I navigated the desolate highway that seemed to stretch on forever. With each passing mile, the tension inside the car grew palpable. Beside me sat my friends, Mark and Lily, their expressions a mix of anxiety and excitement. We had embarked on this road trip with high spirits, but the storm had turned our adventure into something far more treacherous. "We should have checked the weather forecast," Lily muttered, her voice barely audible over the sound of rain. Mark nodded in agreement, his grip on the armrest so tight his knuckles mirrored mine. "Yeah, this is getting pretty intense." As if on cue, a flash of lightning illuminated the road ahead, revealing the empty expanse that lay before us. The highway seemed to stretch into infinity, the rain reducing visibility to a mere few feet. Then, like a scene from a horror movie, I spotted a figure standing on the side of the road up ahead, a hitchhiker. Their silhouette was barely visible through the rain-soaked night, but their outstretched thumb was a clear signal of desperation. "Should we pick them up?" I asked, glancing at Mark and Lily. Lily hesitated, her eyes flickering between me and the hitchhiker. "I don't know, guys. It's kind of risky, especially in weather like this." Mark chewed his lip, his face a mask of uncertainty. "But what if they're stranded out here? We can't just leave them." I sighed, my sense of responsibility winning out over my unease. "All right, let's give them a ride." As we pulled over, the hitchhiker hurriedly climbed into the back seat, water dripping from their soaked clothes. Their face was obscured by the hood of their jacket, and I could barely make out their features. "Thanks for stopping," they said, their voice a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "No problem," I replied, trying to keep my unease at bay. "Where are you headed?" "Anywhere that's dry," they answered with a faint chuckle, their voice slightly muffled. I nodded, pulling back onto the road. The tension inside the car was palpable as we drove on, the only sounds the drumming of rain on the roof and the occasional rumble of thunder. "You must have been out in this storm for a while," Lily said, attempting to strike up a conversation. The hitchhiker nodded, their voice taking on a somber tone. Yeah, I've been wandering for hours. It's been a crazy night. Mark glanced back at them through the rearview mirror. Do you need help or anything? The hitchhiker's response was delayed, as if they were lost in thought. Actually, there's something you should know about this road. I exchanged a glance with Lily, a sense of unease settling in my chest. What do you mean? I asked, my grip on the steering wheel tightening. This road, it's not what it seems, the hitchhiker said cryptically. There's a darkness here, a history of tragic accidents and lost souls. I've heard stories of phantom figures appearing in the rain, leading drivers astray. I shot a glance at Mark, both of us exchanging uneasy looks. Phantom figures? I repeated, my voice laced with skepticism. The hitchhiker nodded, their eyes fixated on the rain-drenched window. Yes, they say that on nights like this, the spirits of those who died here come back, searching for salvation. The atmosphere inside the car grew heavy, the air thick with an unspoken dread. The rain continued to fall relentlessly, each drop a reminder of the uncertainty that surrounded us. Look, the hitchhiker said suddenly, their voice urgent. You need to focus on the road. Don't let the rain distract you. I frowned, my confusion deepening. What are you talking about? Just stay vigilant, they replied, their tone almost pleading. Don't look back, no matter what you hear or feel. As their words sank in, a chill swept through the car, sending shivers down my spine. I wanted to ask more questions, to demand answers, but a sense of unease kept my voice locked in my throat. The minutes ticked by in tense silence, the rain serving as a relentless backdrop to our shared anxiety. The hitchhiker's warning echoed in my mind, a haunting refrain that refused to be ignored. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the hitchhiker's presence seemed to dissipate. I stole a quick glance in the rearview mirror, my heart skipping a beat when I realized they were no longer there. Hey, I called out, my voice tinged with panic. Where did they go? Mark twisted around in his seat, his eyes widening in disbelief. They were just here. I saw them. Lily turned to me, her face pale. But, they're gone. I pulled over as soon as it was safe, my heart racing as I scanned the empty back seat. There was no trace of the hitchhiker, no sign that they had ever been there. This can't be happening, Mark muttered, his voice shaky. My mind raced, grappling with the bizarre and terrifying reality before us. The hitchhiker's story had gotten stranger and stranger, and now they had vanished without a trace. We need to get out of here, I said, my voice laced with urgency. As I pulled back onto the road, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The rain continued to fall, a relentless torrent that seemed to echo the storm of fear and confusion swirling inside us. And as we drove on, the memory of the vanishing hitchhiker haunted me, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are best left unsolved, some stories best left untold.